Thank you. I'd just like to welcome to the stage Lynne and Wain. They're going to perform an extract from Ben Brown's Larkin With Women.
Lovely view of the park.
Yes. John Wain was sick there once.
John Wain?
The writer, not the actor. We'd just come back from a poetry reading. I remember him telling me how his work would live.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't think I've ever heard of him.
No. Right.
You do have a lot of records.
Yes. Well, I get a lot of them for free. I review jazz for the Daily Telegraph.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know you liked jazz.
I don't. At least not what they now call jazz. There's one of mine in today, actually.
Oh, I like this bit.
Which bit's that?
There have been times recently when almost anything, the shape of a patch on the ceiling, a recipe for rhubarb jam read upside down in a paper, have seemed to me more interesting than the passionless creep of a Miles Davis trumpet solo.
Yes, I was rather pleased with that one. So, Maeve, tell me a bit about yourself. I mean, before you came to the library.
Oh, there's not much to tell, really. Born in Beverley, went to St. Mary's High School. Father was a dentist. I told you it wasn't very exciting. But I was...
Yes?
I was head girl.
Really? How odd.
Why?
No, it's just that I always seem to be coming across head girls. And after school?
I came here to the university.
What did you study?
I did a general degree in French history and English.
I studied English too.
I know. And you write poetry. But I didn't know you wrote novels. I'm sorry, I couldn't help but notice.
Well, I don't anymore. I wrote those two in my early 20s.
Why did you stop?
I don't know, really. But I could never write a third, which was a pity. I had hoped I was going to live that 500 words a day on the Riviera life.
Oh, so you always wanted to be a novelist?
Yes. Trouble is, I don't know enough about other people. And whereas you can get away with that in poetry and just write about yourself, novels have to be about other people. Otherwise you run out of material pretty quickly, as I did. Oh well. To be ambitious is to fall in love with a particular life you haven't got, and since love picks your opposite, won't achieve.
Who said that?
I did.
Oh, I don't recognise it.
You know my poetry, then?
Well, only the less to see.
Oh, that's all there is, really. Rather a meagre output, I'm afraid.
I think it's wonderful.
So that was actually scene 3 from Ben Brown's Larkin with Women, which was set in, I think, 1957, the first time Maeve visited Larkin at Pearson Park.
Fantastic, thank you very much. So you were in 2 different productions of Larkin with Women, first in 2018 and then again in 2022. Can you tell us why you decided to revisit it and maybe a little bit about how the productions differed?
Okay, shall I start? So, well, Lynne and I were both in a production, an amateur production, for the Richmond Shakespeare Society in Twickenham, a theatre called the Mary Wallace. And obviously Lynne played Maeve, I played Philip, and that was in 2018. After the pandemic, I actually had reformed my own theatre company, which is called Strut and Fret, which is obviously a quotation from the Scottish play. I was going to take a production up to Edinburgh in 2020, but obviously COVID put the kibosh on that. So in 2022, I was looking for a vehicle in which to resuscitate Strut and Fret, and obviously it was Larkin's centenary. So it seemed the obvious time to resuscitate the play, and also, to be honest, really selfishly, it's a bloody good part. So, and also I thought I'd have another crack at it, see if I could get it right the second time.
Well, and how about the differences? I think, Lynne, you were talking about how you played Maeve differently in both productions.
Yeah, I think we've both done a lot of research about the characters, but in the meantime, playing it again, we found out a lot more about the women, particularly Maeve. I think she was the one that was played quite differently. The first time I played her as much gentler, much more timid, but bit by bit, we spoke to people who knew Maeve, and she was quite spirited. Apparently she liked to party, she loved to dress up, she had boyfriends. Some we heard that she stalked Larkin, she had a goal.
Yeah, the second time around you were a lot more stalkerish.
I was a bit frightening because I wanted marriage and I wanted babies. And I think I was costumed very differently the second time. I was costumed more passionately, I wore a lot of red, and I think the fluidity of the silk gowns was supposed to be her being sort of much freer in her sensuality. So it was quite different, it was in fact a more interesting way to play her.
Fantastic. And Larkin, did you? Yeah. Did you adapt the way that you portray Larkin?
It's grumpy, right?
Well, actually, I mean, seriously, I think the first time I did it, because obviously it follows him right the way through from 55 to 85, so the last 30 years of his life. And I think the first time, I probably just played him as too, thinking about what David Quantick said, too Eeyore-ish, too much of the archetype right the way through. Whereas I think the second time, I thought, 1955, he's relatively young, he's just got a new exciting job, he's in love with Monica, and so I actually decided that at that point, let's not give too much away of the cantankerous old git. Let's kind of just sort of work towards that as you follow him through the 30 years. So I like to think, oh God, this sounds totally poncy, but I like to think there was more of a journey.
Very good. Just one more question before we watch you perform another extract. What research did you do for the 2 roles? Obviously, Lynne, you just talked about speaking to people that knew Larkin, but I don't know about any other research that you did, and how did your research kind of influence those 2 different productions?
I read, I'd done an awful lot the first time around, but I read Andrew Motion's book and anything I could get hold of, listened to Betty's radio talks. We spoke to quite a few people that had come to see the play, spoke to Ben Brown, the author came to see the play, the playwright rather, very supportive. And then I happened to meet Savon and the second time, and he said, "You've absolutely nailed Maeve. She was not a timid girl. She was a bright girl, and she had a goal, and that goal was to get and snare Larkin."
I think for me, the first time I probably did too much research. When I was just drowning in Larkin. You know, I mean, I obviously read the poems, I read the letters to Morica, Wain's selected letters, 2 novels, required writing, further requirements. I looked at the book with the photos, what's that, The Importance of Elsewhere. I mean, May's, the Philip Larkin I knew. I mean, I even read the bloody, what is it, The History of the Brimore Jones Library, which I think was his last published work, wasn't it? You know, and I probably knew too much about him. And actually, the second time, largely because I was producing as well as being in it, I did absolutely nothing. And in some ways, I think it was probably an advantage, because by then I just hopefully kind of sort of just pickled myself and immersed myself in Larkin, and just hoped that somehow he would come through.
I'm sure you retained a lot of that. Amazing early research. Fantastic. So we're going to watch a second piece now from Act 1, Scene 5.
Indeed, yes. So this is 1961, so it's 4 years after the last scene,
Okay.
when they have started to warm up their relationship.
Finn, why don't you believe in marriage?
Where shall I start? Actually, it's not that I don't believe in it. I'm just not cut out for it myself. I think marriage is a marvellous thing for other people, like going to the stake.
Be serious.
I am. I find it a rather morbid idea if you do it properly. A fight to the death.
Well, it doesn't have to be a fight.
Well, perhaps not. But my only experience of it was.
You were married?
No! But my parents were, and they were miserable. And of course, I was engaged once.
What?
Twice, actually, but to the same girl.
Monica?
No. Her name was Ruth. It is Ruth, as far as I know.
You've never told me this before.
It was a long time ago.
Well, who broke it off?
I did.
On both occasions?
I was confused.
Poor Ruth.
Yes.
How did you meet her?
I was working in a library in Shropshire. It was my first job. She was a borrower. She asked if I could recommend anything, so I gave her a copy of Lady Chatterley's Lover. Expurgated, of course.
Well, how old was she?
16.
16!
Well, I was only 21 myself.
So she was still at school then?
Yes. But she was head girl.
How long did it last?
7 years, on and off. But as I say, it was a long time ago. Anyway, the point is, I was miserable when I was engaged.
Maybe she was the wrong girl.
Well, maybe, but I was definitely the wrong guy. My father gave me 2 pieces of advice in life. Never get married and never believe in God. Marrying you in church would be an affront to both of them. I have a confession to make.
Oh?
I got hold of a Catholic marriage service the other day, just out of curiosity. Anyway, it asks the question, for what purpose does marriage exist? And answers, of course, primarily for children. Okay?
So you don't want children?
That is an understatement. When I was a child, I thought I hated everyone. Now I realise it's only children I don't like.
Why?
They're horrible. Selfish, noisy, vulgar little brutes. and cruel, especially if you have a stammer, as I did. No, the only reason I can see for having children is to be looked after by them in your old age. They don't even do that anymore.
I think I better go.
Right.
Shall I see you next week then?
Actually, no.
What? Just because I won't sleep with you?
Of course not. I'm going to stay with Monica.
Oh.
But that doesn't mean we can't still write.
You better give me the address then.
Right. Yes. It's her cottage in Northumberland. Here, I'll write it down for you.
Again about performances. I'm interested to find out what the challenges in playing real people, and as you've alluded to before, kind of watching them age over 30 years.
Yeah, it's quite tricksy. We start off characters very young, and of course that had to be portrayed in costume, in accessories, in the hairstyles. So in some scenes we had seconds or minutes to change a decade. So particularly the girls had to come off stage, change their hair, change their makeup, change their shoes, clothes. So that was, quite a challenge.
I think also, I mean, in terms of playing a real person, I mean, obviously I watched quite a few recordings of Larkin, like the Betjeman Monitor program and so on, listened to him on Desert Island Discs. I think what I tried to aim for was an impression rather than an impersonation, because I couldn't do an accurate impersonation. To be honest, having that for 2 hours might be really boring for them as well as quite unchallenging for me. So I think I was after an impression. But I mean, as Lynne says, I mean, some of the changes, I mean, at one point, I can't remember when it is, but Ben Brown leaps about 11 years. So you leave him in Pearson Park, and then 11 years later he's moaning about being in Newland Park. And quite often we actually changed on stage. So, we had a window seat by a high window. We had a window seat, and I would literally just open up the seat, take one jumper off, put another one on, or one jacket off, put another jacket on. I mean, as he aged, the glasses changed, the hearing aids appeared, so first one, then the other, and quite often that was done in almost a kind of a ceremonial way. So one of the women would actually come in and hand me a different pair of glasses, give me a hearing aid. So hopefully it became really obvious to the audience, oh look, he's aging. So even if my acting didn't give anything away, hopefully the props did.
So quite fast-paced then.
Yeah. But I mean, in some ways, I mean, because it does go from just before that scene we did at the very beginning. It begins with him writing an Arundel tune with Monica there in the kitchen, and then it ends with his death, not to give too much away. Spoiler alert, he died in 1985. It was quite a challenge. I have to say I enjoyed it the older he got. I think just because he got more, I suppose more cantankerous. The lines get funnier the older he gets.
Yeah, agreed. And how do you feel about the real people? You talked a little bit about. Do we have to like the man to admire his work?
Shall I take that?
You take the man bit.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I don't think I would have got on with him that well. I'd love to have a drink with him. I'm sure we'd have a great dinner party. Politically, we are total different ends of the spectrum. I'm not sure you necessarily need to like the man in order to like the work. I have to say, the more I researched him, the more I got into him, the more I did like him. because I kind of got away from the caricatured archetype. It was really interesting. We got some very, very good reviews, some 5-star reviews, but we also got a couple of sniffy ones, which were largely not reviews of the production, but of Larkin. Basically, why are you putting on this play about this awful, horrible man? It was basically the gist of 2 of the reviews. And I got criticised for making him too charismatic, for making him too likeable and cuddly. And you think, well, having spoken to people who knew him, he was. I mean, I remember having a conversation with John Bernasconi, you know, the History of Art department here, and he said it was the best dinner party guest you could ever have. He said he was really funny, really good company. But we got criticised because we didn't play him as the caricature.
Right, I'm going to break now then for another performance. I believe it's from Act 2, Scene 1, so
Scene
now
one.
a Newland
You
Park.
all know this very well. It's Act 2, Scene 1. Right, we leap here. This is going to 1977. So he's at Newland Park, and yeah, this is where it gets fun, where it gets really grumpy. I work all day and get half drunk at night. Waking at 4 to soundless dark, I stare. In time, the curtain edges will grow light. Till then I see what's really always there. Unresting death, a whole day nearer now, making all thought impossible, but how and where and when I shall myself die. Arid interrogation. Yet the dread of dying and being dead flashes afresh to hold and horrify.
Lovely.
I haven't finished yet.
Oh,
That's just the first verse.
how many more are there?
4.
Good. A nice long one then, by your standards.
Do you want to hear this poem or not?
Yes, of course I do.
You don't, do you?
No,
No. Well,
I'm sorry.
why should you?
I'm sorry, it's just a little hard to take at the moment, what with my mother dying and yours.
Right. I suppose people react differently.
I'm sorry.
No, quite understand. I suppose it is a bit morbid. But I thought I'd try it on you. The death throes of a talent. They're publishing it in the Times Literary Supplement, the Christmas issue. That should put them off their turkey. But I'm not happy with it. There's always so much more to say. I mean, it's terribly unfair. One never gets any better at writing. Not like making a window frame or seducing women. Actually, I don't get much better at that.
It's funny both our mothers should die in the same year, isn't it?
Yes. You know, mine was the same age as Thomas Hardy's mother.
Really?
91. Everybody's dying at the moment. Even my doctor died the other day of leukemia. He was 51. You know, the university medical officer. Imagine knowing you have leukemia and spending your days listening to, I could get these depressions, man, all the time. Speaking of depressions, the National Theatre is bringing Larkin Land to Hull.
Oh, really? Oh, that's wonderful.
Really? I'm not so sure. Anyway, I wondered if you'd come along, hold my hand. You know how excruciating I find poetry readings, especially of my own work.
Oh, I'd love to.
Thank you.
Will there be a reception afterwards?
Yes.
Well, I'll have to think what to wear. I'm not used to these theatrical times.
Actually, I'd rather you didn't come to the reception.
Why?
Well, I don't want people to think we're together.
But everybody knows we're together.
Not officially.
Are you taking Monica?
No, she's in Leicester.
But you would take her if she wasn't.
Yes.
Oh, I see. So Monica's your official companion, and I'm just your country mouse, your little bit on the side.
Hey.
Ashamed of me, are you?
No!
Well, have you ever considered how I might feel?
Of course I have.
Yeah, only so you can write about it. Well, I've had enough. And you can stop your bloody Larkin land.
Thank you very much. So just a little bit about Danny. What was it like for you studying at Hull in the 1980s, and what are your recollections of Larkin at the time?
Yeah, I studied English and drama here, 1984 to 1987. So I actually was in the same class, doing the same subject as Rosie Miller. So she and I have always been very, very good buddies. But obviously, Larkin died while I was here. And I have to say, when I came up in 1984, no one said anything about Larkin. If you thought about Hull in terms of culture, it was because of the House Martins. Yeah. Hull 4, London Nil, everything but the girl, because Tracy Thorne and Ben Watt had just graduated from the drama department. You thought about them filming Clockwise at Paragon Station. They just opened up a whole new theatre. You obviously had Hull Truck with John Godber, just having won an Olivier Award and so on. So when you actually thought about Hull in terms of culture, it was that kind of stuff. No one really mentioned Larkin. And to be honest, if anyone did mention Larkin, it was just because he hated the students. Seriously. And so I think, most of us would have just thought he was some kind of bloated old reactionary, to be honest. And I met him once, and actually when we first did the show, I wrote a little thing in the programme called The Philip Larkin I Never Knew. And I actually came into what was then Staff House, so this building. And at the time, I thought Staff House was for the staff, as the name implied. And then I found out everyone could come in, including students. So there was this kind of like long bar, I remember. And it wasn't exactly Hogwarts, it was more Holiday Inn than Hogwarts. I was very disappointed at how kind of drab it was. But I walked in, and there was only one other person in the bar, who was this grumpy old git sitting at the end, nursing a scotch. And it took me a while to figure out it was Larkin. And the two of us just stayed there, him at one end of the bar, me, and then this poor person behind the bar not wanting to talk to either of us. And I have to say, it was also sort of excruciating. I just downed my pint and left. And I always wonder what would have happened if I'd have actually gone up to him. He probably would have said, no, don't even think about it, not coming under my umbrella. But I wish I had actually. It's one of those regrets, we think, what would have happened if I had actually spoken to him? But I remember when he died, I was just in my second year, and my mate, I shared a house with on De Grey Street, he was the editor of Hull Fire, which was the student magazine, the student newsletter. And I remember we met up for a drink in this pub, as we did most nights, and he said, Philip Larkin's died. And for a moment, I had to remind myself who Philip Larkin was. And then we were trying to work on, what would the headline be? And I always remember, and this is absolutely true, we came up with No More Larkin About. And I am pretty sure he got sacked as the editor of the student newsletter because it was too irreverent at the time. So it's quite amusing that now the magazine of the PLS is about Larkin. So yeah, to be honest, I didn't really think much about Larkin at the time. But what was funny was I came back to Hull a couple of times in between for business. And then I came back in 22 for the centenary. So I was very, very lucky that the PLS invited me to the big celebratory thing on the 9th of August. And I realised that that was 35 years after I graduated, which is longer than the length of the play.
So it was nice to come back.
It was lovely. But what was really amazing was suddenly the whole thing's been Larkinified. You know,
Yes.
you've got his statue at the station, you've got the 40 toads, you've got the Larkin Trail.
Yeah.
And it was almost like I thought you were getting so close to like Stratford-on-Avon. I mean, I'm just waiting for the Betty McCarrick birthplace.
Fab. Just thinking about your productions then, what support did you receive from Hull University and from the Larkin Society?
A lot of support, actually. I was very, very grateful. Hull University, the Alumni Association helped us with a lot of marketing. They organised a visit when I think about sort of 30 odd people came one night. Because we did it, the second production was the Old Red Lion in Islington, so one of the most iconic London fringe theatres. And we did it for 3 weeks, so it was a proper fringe production. So I needed to shift about 1,000 tickets. So getting 30 sold to Hull alumni was very handy. But the PLS were very supportive with putting things in various marketing outlets. As I say, I was invited to the centenary. I went along to the Westminster Abbey thing on the 2nd of December to celebrate, well, that's not the right word, but to commemorate his, the day of his death. I also got help from Claire, who we heard from this morning, Claire Weatherall, who just gave me access to loads of photos, including the one that we had on the poster. So yeah, got a lot of support. And Rosie was brilliant, Rosie Millard. She came and did a couple of Q&As after matinees where we just sort of sat there and talked to the audience. So yeah.
I've just got one final question before we go into our fourth and final performance. You talked a little bit earlier about the reception and how maybe the bad reviews were more about Larkin as a person and why you decided to put on this play about this awful person. But how was the production received sort of in general, like maybe by Larkinistas, by the critics, by audiences?
Oh, I think certainly we had Q&A after the plays and very, very well received. In fact, I mean, so well received that, one particular lady said she felt so sorry for Philip, the women, sort of were really horrible to him. It was quite interesting. But generally, it was, and to have the playwright, he brought his family.
Yeah, he
came twice. The second time he brought his children because they were too young when he first written it. So it was a big family affair, and he was thrilled with the production. So I think it was so well received, and people, went home to listen to jazz, to read his poetry, and people came back again. People, suddenly thought, oh yes, I remember Philip Larkin at school. I haven't sort of dipped into his poetry, since returned to the poetry, and then come back again and see the show again. So people did return, so that's
Fantastic.
Might still do it a third time.
Why not? I hope you do. Fantastic. Okay, so shall we go to our fourth
Yes,
and final
indeed.
performance?
And by the way, folks, can I just say well done to Lynne. You notice I'm clinging on to this for dear life. Lynne, bless her, has relearned the lines. So this final piece, it's the last scene. So all three women, Betty, Maeve and Monica, visit Larkin in hospital. So Betty has just left, and Maeve's just about to come on. Flowers. Lovely.
You don't seem to have a vase.
Don't worry. Thatcher will deal with them.
Thatcher?
The nurse is her name. Good of you to come. I'm sorry I couldn't make your retirement party. Though I admit I was rather dreading it.
Oh, that's quite all right.
Did Eddie read my speech, all right?
Oh, yes, everybody laughed.
Good.
How are you feeling?
Oh, as well as can be expected. Just killing time before it kills me. Watching Wimbledon, mostly.
Oh, yes?
Yeah. I like that young German, Boris Becker. He's a spitting image of the young Auden. I met him once, you know.
Boris Becker?
Auden.
I was joking.
Oh. He asked me if I liked living in Hull, and I said I don't suppose I'm any unhappier there than I would be anywhere else. To which he replied, naughty, naughty, which I thought was very funny.
I remember when you hated living in Hull.
Yes. Well, that was before I knew it.
I see you reading the Bible.
Oh, yes. I gave it to myself as a birthday present.
So, what do you think?
Well, I can honestly say it's been a revelation. I mean, I don't believe a word of it, of course, but I never knew it was so beautifully written. I wish I did believe it. Especially the stuff about life after death. But I don't believe anything survives death.
What about your poetry?
Well, time will tell.
What about love?
Mm.
What will survive of us is love. You said it.
Oh. The trouble with that poem is I got it all wrong.
How do you mean?
Well, to start with, the Earl and Countess of Arundel hadn't been like that since the Middle Ages. The hand-holding business was a 19th century addition. And secondly, I got the hands the wrong way around. When I say left, I mean right, and vice versa. And finally, someone I know said that they'd visited the cathedral and been shown round by the guide who stopped the party at the tomb and said this has been the subject of a poem by Philip Spender. So, there's been mistakes all along the line. Look, Maeve, there's something I want to say to you. You haven't met, have you? Monica, this is Maeve. Maeve, this is Monica.
Sorry, nice to meet you. I must be going. Goodbye, Philip.